My name is Lindsey Huff. I'm a certified addictions peer recovery coach with Scott County Thrive, but that's not who I've always been. I am a person in long term recovery. A little bit about my background. I grew up in a home where my dad was an alcoholic, and I don't really stay with that too much because as I grew older, I realized that my decisions were on me. But I did see drinking growing up. He always provided, him and my mom, they always provided for me. I'm the youngest of five. All of us kids have substance use disorders, and I don't know why, and if it's passed in the gene pool or what, but I took my first drink when I was 13. My brother, one of my brothers, who's 5 years older than me, he was kind of like my partner in crime, and so he had some friends over, and I just wanted to try it, just because I was curious. And so the first time I ever drank alcohol, I got blackout drunk, and it was also the first time I tried drugs as well. And so that kind of should have told me at 13 that I was probably going to grow up to have a problem. But I didn't know that that was the case. My parents didn't know. I was pretty good at hiding it. And out of all of us kids, I was always the quiet one. I never got in trouble in school. I played basketball. Like, they thought I was the child they wouldn't have to worry about. And as I got older, when my mom and dad divorced when I was 17, my dad moved out, my mom moved out, so that kind of left me and my brother at the house by ourselves. And I was a junior going into a senior in high school, so it quickly became the party house. I had friends over, my brother would get the alcohol and other things. And by the time I was 19, I did graduate high school by the grace of God, I graduated high school. I wanted my plan to get out of Scottsburg because Scottsburg was the problem for me. It wasn't me, it was my surroundings, and I needed to move far away. I was going to join the Air Force with one of my best friends. That was our plan. And everything was good until I realized they were going to have to give a drug test. And I was not willing to quit doing what I was doing to pass the drug test to go into the Air Force. So my aunt owns, still to this day, she owns a preschool and daycare. She's done it for 30 years. And I got on working with her. I loved kids. I liked the job well enough, but I kind of just got comfortable because it was a job that I didn't necessarily have to show up to every day in order to keep a job. So if I stayed out too late the night before, I knew I could just say, hey, I'm not going to be in today, and she would rather me not come in. So that's kind of how that went. But my first trip to rehab, I was 19. My family did not know what to do with me. I was drinking, sneaking out of my aunt's house, using drugs, and I was like a tornado. Finally, I was like, okay, I'll go to rehab. The first time I went to rehab, it was just shut them up. Like, get off my case, I'll try this, but then leave me alone. So rehab obviously didn't help me because I did not want it to help me. I'd end up going to rehab that year. I was 19, so this was like 2010. I went 4 times in 1 year. I did all the classes that the therapist wanted me to do for anxiety, bipolar, manic depressive, and I just did not care. I still didn't know what was going on with me because in 2010, like, the studies and the resources that they have for addiction and recovery now were not like that 10, 11 years ago. And so I think my family believed at one point I was possessed because nobody understood the grips of addiction. So fast forward a little bit, I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Greenwood, Indiana. That's where I went to rehab several times. And I lived with them for about 3 months and decided to come back to Scottsburg. But I will say this, I found people in Greenwood that were just like me. And what I mean by that is I knew nobody except the people I'd met in rehab, and I still figured a way to get high. So that's when I realized, okay, the problem might be me. So I came back to Scottsburg, got connected with really not so good people. So when I was 19, this was 2011 now, it was the first time that I used methamphetamines intravenously. And it completely ruined me. Within a matter of 6 months, I was completely broke. I burnt every single bridge I had with old friends. My family had no longer, they finally said, you're not staying here if you're still doing this. Like, you know, we don't know what else to do. And so I slept in my car in Austin, Indiana at an apartment parking lot and continued to get high because I didn't think rehab or anything was going to help, and I didn't know much about recovery. I didn't want to go to 12-step meetings, so I was just convinced that this was going to be the end of me. And I had become comfortable in that because the grip that had on me was just, it was insane. So, everybody, you kind of hear people talk when they get into recovery about like their aha moment. So with meth, my aha moment was I had become so desperate to be able to get the drug that I bought it off of somebody that I did not know, and I almost used it intravenously, and turns out it was straight salt. And so I was like this close from just dying. And that's what it took for me to realize, hey, this is not normal. Like you could have literally just died. It wasn't enough for my family to be telling me, hey, you're going to die. I had to find out for myself. So I was able to, I locked myself in, I moved in with one of my friends, locked myself into her bedroom for 2 weeks while I withdrawed. They say that you don't, necessarily need detox for methamphetamines, but I suggest it because it does weird things to you. But I was able to make it through the first 2 weeks, and I didn't do it anymore. But what happened was, where I had no education on addiction or alcoholism or really what my brain was doing, my drinking alcohol, my consumption of alcohol really skyrocketed because when I first started drinking after stopping the use of meth, I was trying to achieve that same high, and I thought I could do it with alcohol, and I was wrong. I would drink so much alcohol with not being able to stop that I would end up blacked out, and I would do just crazy things because when you're blacked out from alcohol, you don't know what you're doing. So it became very dangerous for me. And so at this time, I'm 20. When I turn 21, it gets really bad because then I can stop at any liquor store, I can go in any bar, and I'm normalizing it because alcohol's alcohol, right? I'm 21. Legally, it's okay for me to do. It's not illegal to buy it, to consume it. And growing up, I always try to compare it to, when you're a kid and you open up the fridge, you see Kool-Aid or pop or, well, it's kind of how like alcohol was in my house. You opened up the fridge and there was always alcohol. So alcohol was very normal for me. And I couldn't understand why, like every time I would drink, I could have like 3 beers and the next thing you know, I have no idea. I'm just coming to the next day and being like, what happened? I forgot to say this, but really alcohol started hurting me before I quit using meth. So yeah, when I was 18, my senior year of high school, spring break, I totaled my first car. I was able to get out of that. My parents came to my rescue, and so I suffered no consequences. And I will add that it was almost like my whole entire life I never suffered consequences, and that was not good for me. I can't speak for everybody else, but later in my story, you will hear how consequences later in life basically saved my life. But so that happened. Everything was fine. I didn't get in any trouble. But that was really when my parents and my family were like, something's going on. So fast forward again a little bit. And so for about, I don't know, from the age of 20 to 24, my drinking just got worse and worse and worse and worse. when I was 24, I thought I had like a little mental breakdown. Like, I didn't think that it was the alcohol. I just thought, like, I'm crazy. I'm legit nuts. And so I went to my family doctor. She prescribed me Seroquel because she diagnosed me with bipolar and depression. So I was on Seroquel. Well, you're not supposed to drink all those medications, but I did, and so it kind of put me into what I feel like was a psychosis, because I had drank, and then next thing I knew, I took the whole bottle of Seroquel and ended up in the hospital and had to go into Wellstone, which is in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and on the psych side. I was always used to being on the drug and alcohol side and treatment centers, but this time they put me on the mental side as a direct result of my drinking, though. And so I got out of Wellstone, kept taking the medicine, kept drinking, and got another blackout, and received my first OWI at 24. And got on probation, did probation for a year. I had to go to a bunch of classes, IOP. Still did not stop drinking because I manipulated the system, because that's when I am drinking or using drugs, that's what I do. But I was able to make it through. And then so got done with probation and all my therapy and stuff, and I was raring to go. And then, like, I was going nowhere in life. I was now 25, working the same job I'd worked since I was 16, not really making that much money. I had no plan. I did not care about my future. All I cared about is, I'm ready to get off work so I can go to the liquor store. Still stayed off of drugs. I did not start using drugs again. But, and I will add this because I'm sure that I know that there are people out there that struggle with this, but I'm gay. And that was really, really hard for me to accept and deal with. So I believe that I used drugs and drank too because I hated who I was, because that was not acceptable. My family supported me, but I thought, okay, so I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, I have mental illness. Now on top of this, I'm gay too. Like, I had a lot of resentments towards the God that I knew at that time, because I didn't understand. And so I was actually in a 6-year relationship with a female, and I was like, never get married, never, like, this isn't going anywhere because I don't want people to know. Well, my alcoholism, it ended that relationship. And even though I was ashamed of who I was, that, like, broke me. It broke me because I'm codependent. My worth is in somebody else. And so those things alone, it sent me for a loop. This was in 2017. At the end of 2017, I ended up relapsing and using methamphetamines again. My drinking was off the chain. I had my own house. I had nobody there telling me. I pushed everybody away. So, like, I was good until I wasn't. The beginning of, it was January of 2018, I got into some pretty big trouble. I'm not sure what happened. I know what the police report says, but I don't know what happened. But I was very, very under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and ended up getting arrested. And when I came to the next day in jail, first thing I did was call my mom, and she's like, Lindsey, you've got like 5 felonies. And I'm like, don't remember it at all. I thought that was going to be my bottom. So I'm in jail for a couple days. My family, they came to my rescue. They bailed me out, hired an attorney for me, because, like, this was big girl stuff. It wasn't just like, oh, little OWI, just do probation. I was facing some time. So I had to actually get a paid attorney. And, what ended up coming out of that was 12-step meetings, therapy, IOP, and 6 months house arrest. I was good with that deal. So that was January 2018. I immediately started going to 12-step meetings. I immediately started doing all these things before I went back to court to get sentenced because I was scared to death. It was the first time in my life that I was actually scared of, oh my gosh, I literally have no control. And so from January until May of 2018, I did it. I stayed sober. I went to meetings. I did not get a sponsor or start working any of the steps because I didn't think that I needed to. And so what ended up happening was I went to court and they told me June 15th I would be that's when I was going to be put on house arrest. So my alcoholic mind was like, one more time. So my sobriety date is actually May 19th, 2018. And on May the 18th, I made the decision, all right, I'm going to do this one more time. So I go to the liquor store and I'm in there for like 45 minutes because I can't buy enough. And that should have been enough to tell me, like, Lindsey, come on, like, accept it, you know? But I didn't. So got a bunch of alcohol, went out to the country to one of my friends' house so that I wouldn't drive, because that was my thing. Like, I would drink a few and then I would just drive because I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, go to my friend's house. She's going to have to take the keys to my car. Like, this is going to be fine. I don't remember any of that night. I don't remember any of it. We did get in a car. I was the passenger, but still. And I woke up, well, I'm not going to say wake up. I came to the next morning and immediately just started bawling. And for the first time since I was 13, I felt guilt, shame, and remorse for my actions. And I didn't even do anything major wrong. But what I realized was my goal that night wasn't to get drunk. My goal was to try to drink without getting drunk before I got put on house arrest. And I couldn't do it. So that was my alcohol aha moment. And that was a Friday night. I went to a meeting Saturday, Sunday, and then that following Monday, that's when I got a home group. That's when I got a sponsor. That's when I immediately started on the steps. And that's been the only thing that has ever helped me. Now, I know that was only 3 years ago, but since then there has become more pathways to recovery, and those are great. I can't say whether or not those would have worked or not because they weren't really popular when I needed to get sober. So I'm very glad that there are more resources now than what there was even 3 years ago. But that's really what saved my life. And since I've been sober, I've been able to accomplish a lot of things. Things that, I mentioned earlier, I had no want for a future. I did not care. The first time, because I work a 12-step program, the first time I got asked to give my lead at a meeting, I was so nervous. And I gave my lead, and there was people that came up afterwards. I was like, oh my gosh, you helped me so much. That was the first time, you hear people say, well, we're all here for a reason. We all have a purpose. I thought my purpose was to party, drink, just live life that way. But for the first time after that meeting, I was on cloud 9. And I had a year in sobriety, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I know my purpose. So I found out about peer recovery coaches. After I gave the lead one night, this guy came up and was like, hey, have you ever considered this? And I was like, no, what? I've had a recovery coach before, but I never really thought that I could do it. And he was like, well, there's this training coming up, do it. So I was like, okay. Well, the way those trainings are is depending on what county it's in, you could get a scholarship because they're pretty expensive. But if you don't live in the surrounding counties, you have to pay full price. Well, I did not live in one of the surrounding counties, so I was like, I can't afford that. And it just so happened that a fellow member of the 12-step program that I work heard about it, was like, hey, you're going to this training. And I was like, no. And he was like, listen, this is what you're destined to do. And I'm going to make sure that this happens for you. And so I was able to take the training. I was able to take the test to become a certified addictions peer recovery coach. COVID happened, so I had to wait like a year after the training to do my test, and I was so nervous that I was not going to pass it. But I had applied for two different agencies, two different companies. I had applied for Centerstone, CRC, out in Lexington, Indiana, which is treatment for women, 30-day treatment program for women. Did the interview, but background check came back and I didn't pass the background check. So then I applied to Wooded Glen in Henryville, which is also a treatment center. Didn't pass the background check. And I just felt like shame, guilt. I understand, but I had never been turned down for things of my past. Like, this was a first for me, and it really kind of stung. So I just prayed. I prayed to my higher power, and I was like, if you see fit for me to work in recovery, you'll make it happen. Lo and behold, it happened. And I've never been happier. I've been in this position full time for a year, and it's amazing. Now things still happen. Just because you're in recovery doesn't mean life's not going to happen. It happens more, actually, because and I want to say this too, if anybody that's in early recovery watches this, life is not out to get you. When I first got sober and I would have thing after thing after thing, I'd be like, seriously, like, I'm trying to do the right thing and get sober, and like, what am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. What it is that before, you were never aware of things going on or happening in life because you were always under the influence. Now you're not under the influence, so you're feeling all of life's problems hitting you. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it kind of would upset me at first, because I thought I was trying to do the right thing, finally, and I just felt like bad things kept happening. They've been happening forever. I'm just sober now to deal with them. So the rejection after rejection that I felt was kind of picking on me. And I prayed to my higher power. I was like, if you see fit for me to work in recovery, cool. But if not, like, I'm done trying. Like, I don't like feeling like this. Because part of me feels like I am being picked on, but that's not true. What I believe today is that my higher power knew exactly where I needed to be, and I wasn't ready yet. So what happened was, in March of 2020, when COVID happened, the company where I work, Scott County Thrive, we have been an RCO, which is a recovery community organization, since 2018. But up until 2020, it's just been all volunteer based. So COVID has been terrible. We all know this. It's been awful. But one good thing that came out of COVID was Thrive was able to get grant money to do the regional recovery hubs. And the peer-to-peer projects is what they called it at first. I think they still do call it that. But that gave our executive director of Thrive the funds to hire peer recovery coaches. And one of my coworkers, she's actually peer lead. She's about ready to be program director. Her name's Kelly, and she had been my advocate. Like, don't give up, Lindsey. We're going to get you in somewhere. And I was just like, whatever. Like, no, we're not, but it's okay. She calls me and she was like, are you sitting down? And I was like, no, but why? Like, do you have COVID or something? Because I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And she's like, no. And she's like, so she just told me what I just told you guys about the grant money and the regional recovery hubs. And she said, so we're looking for a full-time peer recovery coach. We have enough money for one. Would you like to be it? I was like, yeah. Thanks for letting me sit down, because I wanted to fall over, because I think I then pinched myself because I thought, this isn't real. Like, I've prayed for these things and like, it's happening in the midst of all of the beginning of the chaos of COVID. Like, everybody's shutting down. Crazy. And so, yeah, I actually did part-time from March of 2020 until August of 2020 because I still worked for my aunt, and it's a small business, and I didn't want to just leave her. So I felt that it was right to give a couple of months notice and stick around until, she could get the help. So that's what I did. But I came on full time in August of 2020, and we're here today, and it's insane. Certain things happen in your life, and especially in recovery, that it's just, you just want to pinch yourself. But it's because each day you just do what you feel the right thing is. You try to do the next right thing, and whatever you need to do to not pick drug and alcohol up, and good things happen to you, because we're good people. Just because we have made some mistakes and have used drugs or drank alcohol the way that we shouldn't, and we've been to jails and prisons and institutions, it doesn't make us bad people. We're good people. We have the biggest hearts. And one thing that really helped me is to understand that I deserve good things. And so another thing that I want to touch on that recovery has really helped me with is accepting who I am. So I had spoke earlier about not accepting the fact that I was gay. And so when I got into recovery, I really worked with my sponsor on that, because I was ashamed. So, I really worked on that part of me with my sponsor, because when I would tell my lead, I just wouldn't say, if I brought up anything about my ex, I would just say my ex. I wouldn't put a he or she on it, for fear of judgment, for fear of actually admitting out loud, hey, this is who I am. And so my sponsor asked me, why? And so she really helped me work through that. And so I worked through it, and today I am engaged to a female. She is my best friend, and we're getting married in October. And I'm super excited about it. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. And I have recovery to thank for that, because, if I'm okay. I'm who I am, and I accept that today. So if you're one of those that are struggling with, you have substance use disorder, you have mental illnesses, and you struggle with, same sex, or any of the categories that fall into the LGBTQ, there's other resources out there for you, and you are who you are, and you're loved for it. There's always going to be stigma around everything. We can't ever take away all of the stigma. We can try, and that's what we do. We try to advocate for our people and let them know that they're loved, but it's just not reality. So, if somebody doesn't agree with the way that I live, that's okay. They don't have to. I have to, because really, in all reality, that's what matters, is that I'm okay with who I am. So if I could, give any advice, to younger me, or to the me that just didn't know recovery was possible, or that there was these resources out there, or that I was even worth it. Because part of me, by the time I got into recovery, I didn't believe I was worth it. And that happens. We feel so bad and guilty for the things that we have done that, that's just how we feel sometimes. But if I could give any advice to that person, is to know that you are worth it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's easy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's not going to be times that you cry, or you scream, or you have mental breakdowns. And it's like I tell some of the people that I work with, at the end of the day, sometimes the only good thing that you can say about that day is that you didn't have to pick up a drug or a drink. And that's okay. Try again tomorrow. But, I really just, if I could have gone back to younger me, I was worth it. I'm still worth it today. And so are, anybody out there that sees this, that is struggling with it. Just reach out to somebody. If you don't know what your local resources are, get online. You can find them everywhere. And don't be afraid to reach out. It's not rocket science. Just have some willingness to do it. And just know that, there are multiple pathways. And there's no shame in any pathway that helps you to get clean and sober. And to be in recovery. You're in recovery when you say you're in recovery. And that's enough.